What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you want to support me, you can use my TCGplayer link in the description down below, or as always, just liking, commenting, and subscribing will do the trick. Now, let's get into today's Deck Tech. We have OMNATH, Locus of Creation. I love this guy, and honestly, we're going to take it a little bit of a different route. Yes, it's going to be Landfall because honestly, that's what OMNATH does, but it's going to be an Earthquake strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? We all know the card Earthquake, right? The only problem is it does make Burn and Commander very viable, right? Because it does a lot of damage to a lot of players all at once, which is what you need to do in a Commander format. The only problem is it does that damage to you. But enter in OMNATH. Now we're gaining life whenever we're putting lands into play, and if we can trigger that third ability, we're also doing 4 damage to every opponent. That puts us at an 8 life differential. They're down 8 life, we're up 8 life. This is going to make it extremely easy for us to use Earthquake effects to end our opponents, and that's exactly what we're going to do with this deck. Now Caleb, you might ask, won't that destroy your whole board, your OMNATH buddy, and then you'll have to recast him and he'll just get more and more expensive throughout the game? No. And I'm going to tell you why. Because between white and green, we have a ton of access to making our commander and our whole board indestructible. Additionally, white has a lot of cards that give us straight up protection. If you have protection from red, you're not going to take any damage, and Earthquake effects are damage dealing sources. Pretty solid, so their whole board is going to get wiped in this process, while our board is untouched, putting us ahead of our opponents by a lot, and then they're going to be open to attack. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but for them. We're not going to get hit, they're going to get hit, and then they're going to get hit again with our creatures. So if that sounds like a deck tech you're into, let's get into it. We'll kick it off by talking about those Earthquake spells and where they fit into the strategy. Earthquake, Rolling Earthquake, and Molten Disaster are not only going to clear the board of any non-flying creatures, but they will also do a lot of damage to our opponents. So, unlike a normal board wipe, not only are we wiping the board, but we are also not prolonging the game, we're making the game shorter because this feeds into our strategy of dealing damage to every opponent all at once, knocking down their life total. Hurricane and Squall Line can also be super solid in the deck because we don't run a lot of flyers, so this will hose those flying strategies while doing the same exact thing of dealing damage to every opponent, including us, right? Now let's talk about how we mitigate those effects. We have Semite Elder. Our commander is 4 colors, so if we give creatures you control protection from the colors of target permanent, we target our commander, we will have protection from white, blue, green, and red. This is going to make it to where we are not affected by Squall Line or Earthquake, and it's going to make us unblockable for 90% of the decks out there. Heroic Intervention, Akroma's Will, and Rapid Vigor are going to be super solid. We can cast that massive Earthquake spell, then give our creatures protection, indestructible, or regenerate them. Additionally, with Akroma's Will, we can pad our life total, so again, we're not being affected as much as the other players. Vigor. This one's super solid. If we get a solid board state going, and then cast an Earthquake for, I don't know, 10, this is going to give all of our creatures 10 counters. It will kill our Vigor, but we can even cast an Earthquake for 5, give all of our creatures 5 counters, and Vigor can stay alive. It's very flexible and honestly super broken. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. This one, we're going to take half the damage, and they're going to take double the damage. So again, we're farthering our game plan while taking half the damage as our opponents. We're just padding our life total while our opponents are taking more damage, doing exactly what the deck wants to do. Akroma's Memorial. On top of giving our creatures basically word soup, they will gain protection from red, which is going to be super important for dodging those Earthquake spells. Not to mention our commander, right? Whenever we play a land, we gain 4 life, and whenever we play 3 lands in a turn, we're going to activate that ability, dealing 4 damage to all of our opponents. So like I said at the beginning of the video, that's an 8 life differential, and this is why this strategy is so good. Let's move on to those cards that can consistently activate his third ability. Also, we do run a couple one-offs that just activate it right out. Invasion of Zendikar is one of those. We're going to ramp 2 lands, and then once we destroy the battle, we're going to get that 4/4 land creature, and that'll be 3 lands entering the battlefield. Boom, we get that Earthquake. Open the Way. Super flexible card. This can net us all the way up to 4 lands, but really we only need X to equal 3, and then we're going to trigger that third ability on OMNATH. Awaken the Woods works very similarly. All we need is X equal to 3, we get those 3 little dryad forests, and we trigger our OMNATH. Notably, that does just get broken if we have other landfall synergies on the battlefield. It can be pretty crazy, just like Scapeshift, right? We're going to sacrifice our whole board of lands, and then go ahead and just throw a lot more lands onto the battlefield. Insane for our commander and our landfall strategies. Dreamscape Artist. Discard a card, sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, and put them onto the battlefield. Now, as long as we have a land per turn, this guy can consistently trigger our commander every single turn. Azusa Lost But Seeking, another one, we can play 2 additional lands, so as long as we have 3 lands in our hand, or lands in our graveyard, right, we are going to be playing lands from our graveyard, she can trigger our commander consistently every single turn. Dryad of Illusion Grove, Mina and Din, and Oracle of Moldiah can also consistently trigger his 3rd ability. We just need some setup here. As long as we have something that lets us play lands from our graveyard, and then a fetch land, boom, we play the fetch land, sack the fetch land, we get another land into play, and then we can play that fetch land again from our graveyard, netting us 4 landfall triggers, and we only need 3. Super solid. AC also works this way because we get to play additional lands. Additionally, we're going to draw a lot of cards with this guy. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. I like this guy because we're just going to be attacking, drawing cards, and throwing lands into play. This can't consistently trigger his 3rd ability, but it can help us get there, right? Risen Reef and OMNATH Locus of Rage. These two can honestly get a little insane, and you might end up drawing your entire deck if you have something like an Elesh Norn on the battlefield, which we do run in the deck. Additionally, it's just super solid. The elementals enter the battlefield, we're going to get a draw a card off of the Risen Reef, and if it's a land, we can put it into play. So this can trigger OMNATH's 3rd ability, while creating a lot of elementals. Who would have thought? Additionally, we have a couple ways to blink OMNATH in the deck, which will also trigger that Risen Reef. Sword of Forge and Frontier and Sword of Hearth and Home. Sword of Forge and Frontier is card advantage while also letting us play additional lands. Sword of Hearth and Home, this is going to blink our commander, making it card advantage, and it's going to throw lands into play. So it's going to get us quicker to that 3 landfall triggers that we need. But blinking the commander will reset the landfall triggers, so keep that in mind. You want to use this first, and then you want to start playing stuff to trigger his ability often. You know, you don't want to Farseek into Sword of Hearth and Home that's just going to reset him. You're just going to gain 8 life. Exploration is a solid card. We're just playing additional lands, right? I like Invasion of Zendikar here because 1, battles are going to be good in this deck because we're wiping the board quite frequently. Additionally, once we flip this battle, we're just going to be able to put permanents right into play. If we don't have any creatures, we can use that to put lands into play, which will get us closer to triggering our OMNATH's 3rd ability. Half of why this deck is so consistent at triggering our commander's ability is the sacrifice lands we are running. With that being said, we need to play these cards consistently every turn, so we need to play land cards from our graveyard. Conduit of Worlds, Ancient Green Warden, and Ramanat Excavator. On top of being able to play lands from our graveyard, Conduit of Worlds will let us get back any of those permanents that we desperately need. Ancient Green Warden is going to double up on all of our landfall effects, which can get broken fast, and Ramanat Excavator is just a Naga Cleric boy. Life from the Loam is amazing in this deck. We're going to get exactly the 3 lands we need back from our graveyard. Titania, Protector of Argoth. I couldn't not include her with how much lands we're sacrificing in this deck. Additionally, her and Risen Reef are also pretty broken in the deck together, and she returns lands from the graveyard. I love it. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Nahiri's Lithoforming. Not only is this going to draw us a lot of cards, but it's basically an extra copy of Scapeshift in this deck. As long as we're able to cast or play our land cards from the graveyard, we can sacrifice all of our lands and then play them again onto the battlefield, getting us a ton of landfall triggers. It can be pretty broken. Additionally, we can split this up. So if we have a way to blink our commander, we can play 3 lands, blink our commander, play another 3 lands, blink our commander, play another 3 lands. I think you can see how this kind of gets busted here, and this might be a pretty good time to mention we run Eldrazi Displacer in the deck. This is going to pair really well with our commander's 2nd ability because whenever we play those 2 lands, we're going to get 4 mana. We can shove 3 of it into the Displacer. That'll blink our commander, draw us a card, and reset his triggers. Moving on to the supporting cards of the deck, we have Abundance. Super solid. Now whenever we're drawing a card, we can make sure it's a land, or if we don't need any more land, we can make sure it's not. I like it. Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. This will double up on all of our landfall abilities as well as our commander drawing cards and any ETBs in the deck. I love it. Displacer Kitten and Eldrazi Displacer. Broken cards in the deck, we're going to blink all of our ETBs, including our commander, resetting our commander's ability. That way we can play, I don't know, maybe 6 lands a turn and trigger it multiple times. I love it. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots will protect our commander. Brother's End is amazing removal. It gets rid of those token strategies. It gets rid of those treasure strategies and those low-costed artifacts. You gotta love it. Beast Within, Generous Gift, again, just solid removal. Moving on, let's talk about the ramp, because yes, we are running more ramp. Nissa, Resurgent Animist, a super solid card that's going to get us into our broken elementals and net us a ton of mana over the course of a game. Lotus Cobra and Tireless Provisioner are also going to be solid in the deck. So now while we're playing the 3 lands to trigger our OMNATH's ability, we're going to get the 4 mana from OMNATH and then 3 mana from these guys. That's going to net us a total of 7 mana from just playing lands before we cast anything. I love that. Then we have our turn 2 ramp, because you can't forget that. Nature's Lore, Farseek, 3 visits. People might think this is overkill, but I also included some signets with Arcane Signet, Gruul Signet, Selesnya Signet, and Simic Signet. You might ask, why would you include these 4 signets specifically? It's because these are all of the signets with green in them, and if we can't get access to green early game, the deck's honestly just shut down. So I thought it was worth including the extra mana fixing to ensure that that doesn't happen and we're able to play through the early game to get to that broken late game board state. Moving on to the card advantage, we have Tatiova Benthic Druid, OMNATH Locus of Royal. Usually I don't run this guy, but it's not going to be hard to get 8 lands in this deck, so we're definitely throwing him in here. Horn of Greed, you better be playing the most lands and getting the most value off of this, because if you're not, I don't know how to help you. Sylvan Library is also going to be an amazing card in the deck because we're gaining a lot of life with our commander, so we're going to be paying that 8 life almost every time to draw a lot of cards and have little to no repercussions because of it. Will of Misfortune, Windfall, and Reforge the Soul. There is a possibility that we run out of cards almost completely, so these can refill our entire hand. Pretty solid. Seagate Restoration, another solid card. For late game and early game, we can just throw it down as a land. And if you don't mind the budget, go ahead and throw a Boseiju Who Endures in here. This is going to be super solid. We can fetch it back with our Life from the Loam and basically destroy whatever we want, whenever we want. Guys, that's going to do it for the deck tech. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really think this is a fun OMNATH build that's going to be super efficient. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors.